strategy,
design,
marketing,
UX,
digital.
development.
This is Agencies That Build. This show is dedicated to leaders and teams that design and deploy in the digital world. My name is Jessie, and I'm a marketer and an agency owner.
And I'm Varun. I'm not a marketer, but a coder and an agency partner.
This show is sponsored by Together We Ship.
On a mission to help agencies grow.
All right, rock on. Here we are today. I am excited for this conversation, Varun, just because we were prepping just now, and there's so many wait, save it for the episode. How are you? What's new? You have an exciting shirt on. I am going to comment on it. You've had a couple this week when we've been recording.
Yeah, I mean, of course, why not?
It's nice. I know I've gotten more boring and you've gotten more exciting.
That's the only time I get to wear some formals. So, I don't mind that.
Sounds
yeah,
good.
I'm good. How are you? Who do we have today?
Okay, let's dive in. With a deep passion for technology and a relentless drive for innovation, he has made remarkable contributions to the field of technology and has garnered a reputation for his visionary leadership. His journey in the technology industry began with a strong educational foundation. With a degree in computer science, he embarked on a path that would ultimately lead him to establish InfernoRed Technology. And I said it correctly. A testament to his entrepreneurial spirit and unwavering determination. He has been instrumental, that word I struggle with, in shaping InfernoRed Technology into a dynamic and forward-thinking company. His strategic insights and ability to identify emerging trends have allowed the company to stay at the forefront of technological advances. Without further ado, I'm pleased to welcome CEO and co-founder at InfernoRed Technology, Scott Locke. Scott sassed me before and made sure I said InfernoRed correctly. So I'm just saying that publicly on the podcast, and I did 3 times.
Well,
so welcome to the podcast, Scott.
Thank you, Jessie. That's an intimidating description of my path. I think it's been helped by my co-founders as well, Art and Josh. Let's make sure they get their
nice shout out.
Their due. But yeah, thank you. Great to be here.
Thanks for being here. All right, Varun, we're not an icebreaker. You have an initial question before we myth bust? What do you got?
Well, I was just before the podcast, I was watching this trailer of Mission Impossible. I don't know if you guys are any fan of
the new one.
The new one.
Yeah.
What was fascinating about that was I knew Tom Cruise is really old, but he's 61 and he's still doing all his stunts by himself, which was crazy. I still can't take that out of my mind right now. Some of the stunts, they're in Norway and they were really jumping off the cliff.
Yeah, he jumped a motorcycle off a cliff. It was crazy.
That was insane. I can't take that, video out of my head. I can't just believe. So I just thought I want to share that. I don't know
if you also notice in that trailer is 90% of Tom Cruise just running. He's just running from something. Go watch it again. Go watch the trailer back and you'll see it. I was watching it with my son and I'm like, you realize this trailer is just Tom Cruise running. The whole time he's running from something.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
it's a metaphor.
Let me ask you both a question. Would you do the stunt? If proposed, how much?
Oh, no, definitely not. No,
for $1 million, would you do it?
No, probably not. I get out of bed and my feet hurt and my back. I can't imagine at that age. I mean, I guess if I was in his shape, maybe, but I'm a different shape than Tom Cruise. So so it's definitely not in the cards for me. I need to exercise more.
Let me ask you. All right, I'll ask you one more, and then would you do it if you were 20 or 18?
Yeah, because I wouldn't know any better.
Right, dumb enough to do it.
Yeah. I have 2 boys that are teenagers and they do things all the time where I'm like, what were you thinking? They were stacking chairs. We had this event in the hotel and the boys and my co-founders' kids were together and they were stacking chairs. They were bored. So they were just stacking and jumping over them. And we walked over and we're like, guys, what are you doing? This is probably not a good idea. You're going to face plant into the ground when you catch your foot on the, they're like, well, this is fine. Okay, we're not going to get hurt. Yeah, let's stack these over here. But if I was 20, maybe, but I don't know. He held onto the outside of a plane in the last movie. Who does that? That's nutty. But he's generally a crazy guy. So
Interesting. Varun, would you? And then
No.
you wouldn't do
No.
it?
Never,
regardless of
no.
age?
Bruno and I
Yeah.
we would know.
What's the point? Why would I want to do that? Like, why would I want to?
I'll tell you, Jesse, very quick story. In my early career, we were working with a company out of Canada, and they were partnered with another company out of Australia, and we went to Breckenridge
Mhm.
for like the day, and decided that it would be a good idea to go mountain biking because it was summertime, which sounds amazing. And I was younger, it was probably in my 30s or whatever, early 30s, and I'm like, I can do this. I know how to ride a bike. And so they were running a professional bike race on the mountain, which should have been the first sign that this was a bad idea. The long story short, like I rent the bike, we go up to the top, and the Australians headed down the black trail, and I headed down the green trail because I didn't know any better.
Smart
And the
decision.
green trail at Breckenridge is like the black trail at every other mountain in the world, which I also didn't know. 2 hours later, I got to the bottom, and the Australian team had gone up and down like 2 or 3 times, and they were nursing
Aw.
wounds on their backs, and I said, I never need to do that again. Like I sat at
You did it once.
sat at the bar and watched football because it was the opening day of the NFL season, and I'm like, this is not for me. I like to ride a bike, but then it doesn't need to be down a mountain. So
Yeah, I feel like in my younger years I would have done it. I was traveling in New Zealand in my 20s. I was over there in Australia, and we went on a trip to New Zealand, and the bus stopped at like bungee jumping. They're like, anybody want to go? And they happened to be closed, but I was like, yep, let me go. I'll do it. Let's do it. I don't, however, want to be in a cave. Like put me on the top of a mountain, no problem.
Nope. I have no
So-
desire to like cave dive in like the water in caves. Nope. I can't even go near railings anymore. This happens in your 40s when you have kids. Like you get that feeling of vertigo. Like, yeah, I can't do it. Like we go to a hotel, and if there's a balcony, I'm like, no, this is not for me. But
well, let's dive in and talk about a little bit of myth busting. Now we've been busting some of our personal myths over here. I guess you could call it that. Scott, so what is some sort of myth, bogus strategy, misconception? What do you want to set the record straight on?
I think so. When you were asking, prep for this meeting, one of the things that we see occasionally, even with our clients or when we're talking to teams, is that, hey, if we add more engineering to this project, that will it go faster? Like, can we hit the deadline sooner and quicker? And it seems like it's an obvious answer, like this mythical man month type of situation, but they always fall into the trap. And I think that that's an important myth to bust, which is, adding more people, especially in technology and software engineering, to a problem will make it somehow go faster, be easier. There is truth to the fact that like being able to, pair and bounce ideas and troubleshoot together is effective, but adding more people to a project just doesn't make it go faster. And I've recently I heard a quote that I really was trying to take to heart, which is, if you want to move fast, do it alone. If you want to go far, do it with a team. And that's kind of the approach that we take when we're working on projects. We staff them with the right amount of people in the beginning, and then ramp up as necessary to do that go far type of objective and initiative. But that's the myth. I always feel like when we run into hey, what can we do to accelerate this, that I feel like I'm always having to debunk. It's like the team is smart, they know what they're doing, they're ramped up, they're ready to go. You add another person, then you start that process over.
That reminds me of this saying I heard, like 9 moms cannot produce a baby in 1 month, right? So that is pretty much what it comes to in development. We've had so many conversations with our clients on this, but I'm curious to know, how do you respond? How do you answer those questions when your clients are asking and trying to move things faster? Would you just say, no, it's not possible?
Well, I think for us, one of the things we just recently did this with a client where, we make it clear, like, our interest is their interest. Like when we join a project, we're not, and this is how we do it. Like every company does it differently. And what they focus on is to each their own. no one's going to come in and say like, well, we don't focus on the client. Like, of course we do. But we have an approach where, we're not trying to put, butts in seats. We're trying to build awesome software. And so how do we do that in a way that is both effective for their budget? Because like no one else, and that's the other thing, no client comes to you and says like, we have an endless amount of money. Like, we just don't know what to do with it. Let's spend it all. And so we start off with like, let's do an estimate. Let's figure out what the, what the order of magnitude here is. And then let's ramp up the team and start with, a team that makes sense for the beginning. Like, you got to get up and running and speed. It may be that this project will require, 5 engineers and a project manager and a tester, but we're not there on day one. Like, you typically don't need that. So let's get the team ramped up and get going, and then we'll staff it as needed. And so we establish that trust early on. And so they don't feel like, you are trying to like just do a money grab, or you're trying to, get as many people, because they know you're consulting. They know how your business model works. And that creates that trust of like, we're in this together. Like, we're going to build you a product. We're going to get it to market. We're going to ship. And we're going to do that gradually and iteratively. So, I mean, that's our approach to it. And that seemed to work well for our team.
And I think it also kind of depends on the type of work, the type of project you're engaged in. Like, we do both type of jobs, right? Both types of work where we are doing consulting and we are actually doing implementation. So when somebody has asked us to build or design a user interface for a mobile application or web applications, which has hundreds of screens, once the strategy is designed, once the strategy has been created, once the workflows and user flow diagrams have been mapped out, all you need is more hours, man hours, to create and produce those designs following the brand guidelines. For that type of work, yes, you can produce more in less time by adding more people. But when it comes to end-to-end solution building, then it might not be the same way, because every step, every phase of the project will require a certain time that it will read, no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're saying, it happens, but in our experience, I mean, because we do mobile as well, we do web, we've designed and laid out and done the creative. It's not like we're not a design shop per se for like UI and UX. Like, that's not our specialty. But when we're in those situations, what we find is, even when you're laying those things out, like, the client never totally understands and knows what they want. Like, even, once you start getting it into the hands of users, or you're building prototypes or proof of concepts, or, you're doing your testing, things change along the way. And sometimes dramatically, right? I mean, they're like, we thought this would work well, and now that we actually see it and we get a chance to do it, it's not exactly what we want. And so, I think you're at that point, you're usually typically like ramped up, because the thing about like mobile apps, for example, like, that's the tip of the iceberg. Like, the app itself is just like the interface, everything that goes behind it, which is what we're full stack. So we're doing backend APIs, we're doing data, we're doing all of the development from beginning to end. And that stuff is harder to change once you start to go down certain paths. The challenge is like not getting it right or perfect in the very beginning, but making sure that it's a good established application that people can test and use, and then you can make the modifications iteratively. And that's what we've been doing. We just released an app. We're actually releasing an app this week. Well, it came out Monday, for a national convention that we're heading out to in Chicago. And the client's going to get a ton of, user feedback. And we already know, like, because we worked on it for the last several months, that there's areas where like, this is going to change, because we're just so happens it's in the field, in an area that I'm pretty passionate and a customer myself. And so I was giving my old feedback of like, let's see what happens, but we'll make some changes here. But I think it just depends, like you said, like if you have as much laid out up front, like maybe you can do that, but it's just difficult in our experience. So we pace it, right? We just, again, it's about managing money and managing time and expectations from my experience.
So I want to go back to kind of the mix of employees that you have on the team. I know we've talked about your expertise in software engineering and the seniority and the talent that you have on the team, but something interesting that you guys do, and we're finding a lot of, I don't want to say a lot, I'd say a definite large smattering of agencies we work with are doing the same thing. You don't have PMs, project managers, you don't have BAs or business analysts on the team. Is that true? It is true.
Well, we have a couple. We have super senior agilists is the term I would use. I mean, they can be a BA, they can be a project manager, but only
there's people who can do the function, but you don't have somebody in the team that is called a project manager.
Not really. Like they would, Plus they're pretty strong agilists. They would there is a religious war in the agile community on like whether they're PMs or not PMs, but I let them fight that out. I don't have a dog in that fight. But that's true. Like we're not focused on that. Like what's kind of different about, I think, InfernoRed is that we have this software developer first perspective. And so I say this all the time, even when I meet clients for the first time, I'm like, we focus on trying to find meaningful and interesting work because it's much harder to find highly qualified senior engineers who have the same talent and capabilities that a company like ours have. And then getting them engaged in something that they're passionate or interested in doing is incredibly important because then they become fully engaged. They become part of the team. Like I always say, like, our team often like gets to know the business as well or better than even our clients do. And they just get super proud and professionally engaged when they're working. And that's just, that's important, I think, to have two things. One, to have a team that's when it comes to retention, like our retention is insane. Like, I mean, we're small, but we like nobody leaves, and we're proud of that. And then the second is like that they stay also because the work, right? Like what they're actually doing, they're learning. Like learning is one of the most valuable things to a software developer. I think even when it comes to money and benefits and those kind of things, like they can get those things anywhere. They know that they're one of the most sought after resources in the industry, but continuously.
How do you foster that though? How do you, and I know we've talked about this before the recording, it was actually going to be my next question, is like from a retention standpoint, talent is one of the services that people are buying from, from agencies. How do you, you said it when they're not learning, like, how do you set up internally to be able to foster, champion, or encourage, or whatever word you want to use here to kind of get people to learn more outside of the work that you're accepting, because sometimes you get the same type of project 3 projects in a row and people are like, I'm so tired of building this thing.
Yeah, no, that's a hard problem to solve. Like, and I don't know that we're perfect at it. I mean, the first line of defense by far is the work, like you said. I know you asked outside of that, but that is the first and foremost. Like, it is my job to find things that that qualify for like things that we would find interesting. I think the fact that myself and my 2 co-founders, that we were software engineers and we built this company really like for software developers by software developers. And I don't know if like that's cliche or not, but that is how we think about it. So I spent, this, no offense to the companies that love federal work, but we spent 3 years in the sub basement at OPM in DC. And I don't know if you've ever been into the sub basement at OPM in DC, but like, it's like right next to like the bomb shelters. Like, and we were like, this is not what we want to do. And so we look for the type of work that would be engaging. So that's the first line of defense. The second line is we have this continuous engagement model that we use. We actually use a platform called 15.5. Shout out to 15.5. And we've established this over the last few years where we do continuous engagement with our team as we get bigger. When you're just 3, co-founders, it's pretty easy to talk to everybody. But as you get to 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 people, it becomes much harder. So we've made a purposeful investment in that concept, in that platform. And so then last, like improving on our professional development, like giving people time and opportunity and money to be able to learn something new based on what's aligned with the company. Like, hey, if you learn React, like it's going to be easier for us to staff you on a React project, right? Or if you get, if you're an iOS engineer and you want to learn Android or something like that, we put skin in the game to help and encourage them to learn. And then we ask them, like, focus on making yourself better this year. Like, what can you do to invest in your career? And then lastly, like, we hire like senior to mid-level engineers pretty much exclusively. We're not a company that's hiring like junior devs, trying to make them into like mentored into senior. We focus on the higher end, higher level. So most of the people that we actually already have on staff and that join our team already understand why they invest in their career and why it's important to learn, and they're obsessed with tech. So I don't have to really push very hard for people to try new things or to learn. Like, I just
say that in your job description, must come work for us if obsessed with tech.
I honestly, like, that would be great. Like, I mean, again, consulting companies or businesses like ours are going to look for those people all the time. But if we,
Of course,
we feel like we put out a pretty awesome opportunity for them. So
I mean, those are some really interesting points that I actually don't hear a lot from other agencies. Like, always hire senior and most expensive people, because to run an agency, senior doesn't come cheap.
yeah,
so
that's very true.
to maintain that philosophy, like, hire, and I understand the idea behind it, but I also see the challenges that come with it for the bottom line. So how do you maintain that? Like, because you're saying you are very selective about the projects. I mean, you look for special types of work only, which gives, which has purpose. And then on top of that, you also, your team is, it's not very small. You have about 35, 39, I think, odd people.
39.
So I would, so that's not small by any means when it comes to, agencies in this world. And then keeping your cost high by having the, senior people in play and keeping them utilized for, I hope, for most of the part, to keep it profitable. How do you manage that? Do you have some secret sauce on how you generate the sales engine? Like, how is it driving the business and keeping everybody busy? Like, how does it work?
Well, so we did, to be fair, like this, we didn't start this way, right? So we're in our 11th year. And when we started in the beginning, right, like it was, and like I've heard other people on your podcast when they talk about when they first started and you were doing everything yourself. I think the founder from Wizardly was talking about that just recently on your podcast. There's an advantage to be in those meetings, I think she said, where you're hearing everything. And so we started off, like the three of us, just, hunting and pecking and then executing on our own, writing code ourselves. I mean, I haven't written code in 10 years at this point, which is great for everybody, bad for me probably, but great for them. But we didn't start that way. So we've evolved into it. And I think it's been in probably the last 5 or 6 years where we made I said purposeful, but we made an intentional shift to be focused on our team first. And so we're a team first model, which is kind of like when we just did a strategy session with one of our, and I know every company, if you're not an entrepreneur who's being coached or working with a coach, everybody needs a coach. Like I shout out to Alan Zhang and 88 Owls, like he's the best in the world. He's amazing. And we've been working with him for 10 years. And we just recently did another strategy session just to kind of realign where we were as we want to expand and scale. And, we learned, that we want to refocus again back on the fact that we're team oriented and team focused. Of course, we deliver software and we work with clients, and you can't have a company without it. But we also, without the team, there is no business. So to your question about like the senior and the cost, the way that it works for us, I mean, if we are not the cheapest consulting company out there, we're not the most expensive either. When you compare us to like some of like the larger bigger consulting companies out there that have like insane rates. But we focus on the value, right? So when I'm working with a client, we just had this discussion internally, like pretty heavy. Like if they start to question the value of the team, that's when we're failing. That's when we're breaking down. It's not like, hey, you delivered something, there's bugs to fit, like not the intricacies of a project, it's the value. If the client comes to me and says like, I don't know if I'm getting blank, right? That doesn't happen very often with our team. So then, and I think that's the product of having the senior experienced engineers. So you don't have to like, there's two things you're looking for. You're looking for obviously technical talent, and you're also looking for consultant and client talent. They have to have them both, be independent operators, and then be able to work on a team. And like that comes with experience. So that like 5 to 8 year engineer, like to me, like that's mid-level to bear, you know, bordering senior, maybe senior, depending on the like, skills you're looking at. It's like the perfect zone of developer, because they know they don't want to be managers, like they don't want to manage a ton of people, and like they just want to write code, and they're really good at it. And so that's the type of where we look for, and then probably a little bit more senior than that.
Let
And
me
mix
ask you
it
a
all
really
They
together.
get accountable. And they're
Yeah.
accountable too, right? Because accountability
Yes.
is huge, right? To your
Mhm.
point, like to make sure the clients don't complain and don't come to you.
Well,
asking for
accountable,
failure.
most importantly, accountable to each other, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I think like that's part of like our team, like if you're on a team, so in our team sizes vary, right? Like sometimes we have like those beachhead type of projects where it's just one person kicking off the project, and we, as I said earlier, like we ramp the team up. Sometimes, sometimes a team starts off with 2 or 3, and usually we cap it, but our team sizes, you know, go up to about 7 or 8 people, and that's like a healthy project size for a company like us. But when they're in that type of team structure, like they are holding each other accountable. Like they follow, like we set the bar in terms of like best practices on our projects. We get hired to do that. Like, can you guys come in and like show us like the best way to like follow, you know, good software engineering practices, good team management? And so we do that almost on every project. But the team, like you said, like they know what to expect, and that's important. And so they can do that and hold each other accountable. And I don't know, it seems to work. It seems to be working.
That's what people forget with hiring junior people. You have to teach them how to work, not how to do the work. Well, some of that too, but it's like you have to teach them how to function in an office, or maybe not physically in an office, but how to like adult in a professional environment.
Well, yeah,
you know, you're looking for people who already have those skills.
Yeah, and that's a lot of work, right? I mean, I think like we have a friend, a professional friend of ours, and one of my former bosses. He's got a company called Next Up and Acceleration, where they chose to do that. Like their business model is focused on emerging computer science students in the universities, like Virginia Tech, and there's Carolina, I think, and then also like workforce reestablishing, like you're coming back into the workforce. I forget the name, but so that requires like mentors. Like you have to like put a business model in place to support that. And we hire engineers that are at the point in their career, like they just want to write code. They're like, that is what they care about. Like, we want to write code and we want to learn, and that works for us. So
Let me ask you, how do you guys have a specific way of interviewing for that? Like, is there a test that you run? And we've asked other agency owners the same thing, to see if there's any like nuggets of knowledge floating in there. They're like, oh my God, we always ask this question, or we always run this type of test, or no, testing is a pile of garbage, we shouldn't do that.
yeah.
How do you find, what's the right mix? I guess, like what nuggets do you have in terms of interviewing and finding that person that you know is going to be a fit? Is there anything?
It's interesting. That's a great question, because I think, you know, over the years we've tried different things, but at the same time we've kind of stuck to the same recipe. So our interviewing process is pretty straightforward. Like we have 3 or 4 of our most senior and tenured developers that know how to interview, right? Like that's one thing. Like they know when to ask questions. I mean, it's a conversation at the end of the day. They understand. They're also the ones that are typically going to be leads on teams, and it's not just technical that they're looking for. They're looking for like team capability. And so they go through that process. We have an interview with a team member, maybe one or two, depending on like sometimes technical, but mostly a lot of it is like team fit. And then the second part of the interview process is they meet with all three of the co-founders, meet with every candidate that we're hiring. Because we also, again, the secret sauce may just be that we know the type of person that works well at InfernoRed.
Practice.
And we feel like we don't get perfect every time, but we have a pretty solid track record of hiring people that are a great fit. And, you know, I think that if you kind of know too, definitely on the technical side, right? I feel like the technical side is pretty easy to weed out. Like if you have solid engineers who can ask, you know, the right questions, they know pretty fast. Like they're like, yeah, that's not true, or what, you know what I mean? Like you can't BS them. Like they're too senior, too tenured to know, because they've been there.
But it is, you're asking like technical questions that will help you assess whether or not they actually have some sort of level of understanding, or are they throwing buzzwords at you?
Well, right, because like these people can interpret resumes, right? I mean, like they can see things on resumes, they know what it means, and so they can ask deeper questions. And again, we try to align like the interview with somebody who's got that level of experience. We haven't done testing, I don't even know, ever. But one thing we do that we're not as consistent as we should be in this, but we do have them write some code, right? And we've always had this philosophy of like, you wouldn't hire a writer without like seeing a piece or an example and seeing what they can actually do before you put them into the content creation team or whatever it is that you're going to do. So we do that. And it used to be in the early days, we were so heavy Microsoft focused that it was really easy to do that, because it was one stack and you're like, hey, can you open Visual Studio? Do you know where to go? Do you know how to navigate it? Like write some code. But now, as we're pretty polyglot and cross-platform, agnostic, it's a little bit harder, because it's like, there's just so many texts at play, so many languages, and you have to know so much to be able to do half the things that we do. It's a little bit harder to kind of like to knock it out with like a single coding test.
And with ChatGPT, who knows, they're writing the code themselves, or you need to have them
oh my god, like
and write code.
It's funny, like I to be honest, we haven't even considered that as a issue, but now you say it, like that's a problem. ChatGPT is interesting. My team has started, I'm paying for like licenses for they use it as a almost like an assistant as they're going through. It doesn't write code for any of our team, but it definitely helps, like, hey, what's the method for this, or what's the best way? It's like kind of replace like that Stack Overflow search that everyone used to do.
Their Copilot is great. I have a question about, as I'm hearing your methodology on how you hire and manage your work, I'm curious to know how, like, if you can walk us through like end to end on the process of execution of project, meaning, a new client, you acquire a new client, somebody in your team, that since you don't have a producer, you don't have an account manager, you have, somebody who understands agile, and then you have individual contributors, senior developers, designers. But then typically, when a sales happen, a salesperson, business person will go and bring the client, create the proposal, do the knowledge transfer to a PM, and then the team goes on. There will be one point of person contact, account manager or producer, who goes in and keeps a regular check. So I'm less worried about keeping the client up to date. I'm more worried about, or at least curious to know about, how you navigate that discussion. There must be one person or one point of contact who takes the ownership of the entire project. Especially, let's say there's a team of 2 or 3 developers, right? So designer, developer, QA, there's a team. And you also mentioned that you don't do testing, or is it? Oh, that was on the talent acquisition side, not on the project.
We do testing on we test when we test.
Because I know some people who are so confident about their development engineers, that they do their own testing. They don't have a third-party testing
Yeah.
team.
So there's a lot in there. Let me try to unpack that. So when I say we don't hire project managers and PMs, that doesn't mean we don't have them. So our model is that we're focused on the software developers and the software engineers for our full-time employees, but we work with companies like when we get into a project and we need to have like a full-time project manager or even a part-time project manager, we subcontract that out to a company whose focus is on project management and BA, right? So, again, I'll plug our partner, Spritebulb, like they're amazing. That's who we've worked with for years, and we've grown together. And so in our projects, we have those roles, right? We just, for our internal focus on who are full-time employees and who we're invested in, it's in the software engineering side. And then anyone else who's within the team, to be honest and frank, like anyone else who's within InfernoRed on the company, their job is to support the engineers and the software developers who are then on clients and projects. So let me walk you through like the way that we approach it. It's still pretty traditional in the sense of like the way you just described, but there's some subtle differences. When it comes to selling, like right now, like I do a lot of the selling. Like, so I'm technical enough to get engaged with the team to hear like what the work is and be able to speak intelligently technical. But then also I'm a decision maker, so I can make decisions on behalf of InfernoRed, and I understand like the staffing situation, things like that. Challenge is scaling that, right? And I'll talk about that in a moment. So when we have an engagement, we always start to work, with the product owners, the business owner, whoever it might be, on like what it is that we're doing. We are pretty exclusive time and material in our project structures. We've decided like fixed price just doesn't work for a company like ours, and has really never kind of worked out for the client because everyone starts arguing about scope, and I have to have that. I don't have the money, and that's on, so early on, we've kind of decided like we'd focus on time and material as a structure, but we do an early estimate to give, we understand it's not blank checks, and we understand that we need to be able to put some sort of guardrails on what we're doing so we can staff it correctly and that the customer feels comfortable moving forward. So we follow this estimation process roughly. We've done it for years. It's an agile process developed by Michael Cohn in a book years ago. It actually escapes me the name of the book, but if you look up Michael Cohn, agile software estimation, like he's got this process that we've kind of adopted and modified for us, which allows us to do this like 50-90 type of estimate where 50% of the time it's going to take this much time or more, 90% of the time it's going to take this much time or less. And then we let the engineers like break the work down, and they don't think about the money, they're not thinking about the cost, they're just thinking about the work. And we put that together in this spreadsheet that we've kind of formatted over the years, and we share that with the client, and we walk through it, and like this is what we think it's going to be. And that establishes like the initial like size of the work. And then we start and we get engaged. I always have somebody engaged. We were starting to move when we were smaller. It was like we wore multiple hats, and so we kind of tried to do everything. But we are starting to move more towards a model where there is a single person or a person who's responsible for one or many projects. And right now a lot of that is with me, but we're maturing our own organization and establishing more of like a COO, service delivery structure. And those are some like things that'll be coming out within the next several weeks for our team as we put ourselves in a position to scale past where we are over the next several years. But like right now, like that's the process we follow. And it also is dependent upon the client. Like some clients, they're small enough where, it's a conversation once a week. Or they're big enough that you need to have a continuous engagement with them as well. Which by the way, I will add one thing to that, which is we do these huddles with our team. I mentioned continuous engagement. So we do that on an individual basis, but we also have this concept of huddles where we talk about the project and the client in the context of the project and the client with the team. And we do those like usually once a week or every other week. And we just keep the conversation flowing. that's worked really, really well for our teams and our sizes of projects. So
Interesting, you do that every week though. I mean, we call it know your client. So we also do something similar where we
Yeah.
put,
Which is
basically
great.
give the context to the team, like this is the client, this is their background story, where they're coming from, why they want this. So they get the holistic idea of why we are building this. But when you say you do it every week, what does it mean? What exactly do you talk about every week in the
So it's a
huddle?
little bit different, right? Like when I do a huddle, like the huddle is intended to be like a safe place for the team to talk about like what's on their mind. Like literally, if I was having a huddle with you two right now, and we're working on we're on the podcast project, and we're excited to be building this platform, and they're just starting, or they've been working on it for a few months. I always say like the huddle is for you. It's for you to be able to talk about what's happening on the project. If there's something else that's on your mind and you want to talk about it with the team outside of the client and the context of the project, like this is a safe place to do that. So sometimes like those conversations, I mean, they're kind of like having like an account owner meeting or an account team meeting, like but it's
like
a little
regularly scheduled,
Yeah.
rather than like a spontaneous, oh, I just want to complain or sort through a problem.
Yeah, usually it's like, and we can do them in 5 minutes, or sometimes they're 30 minutes. It really just depends. Sometimes the team's like, yeah, no, everything's great. We're just working on this release. We're trying to get done before the milestone or whatever the thing might be. Or other times they're like, oh my God, like we're really struggling and we can't get access to this backend system that we need. And like, hey, Scott, can you send something, so there's like, the idea is that this time is meant for the team, but in the context of the client and the project. And because the teams change, right? Like, so like you might be on, project A for 3 or 6 months, then you shift to project B, that context shift on a larger basis is still, you got to get your head out of the work that you were doing before. And it also keeps the team connected to InfernoRed. And like, that is super important for us when I go back to that, like, why do people stay here? It's because in our business, and I'm sure in yours, like they don't want to feel like they're working for the client. Like there's a lot of companies out there where their model is like, we hire you, we put you out on a project, and we send you a check, and we'll talk to you, at the quarterly meeting. Like, and that is not how we operate. So keeping that engagement and connection with the company is super, super important.
That's a wonderful kind of, I want to highlight what you just said about like they work for InfernoRed. They don't, while you all are working for a client in some context, it's highlighting the fact that they're working for a brand together. Your company, it's a wonderful way to articulate that. And, we talk to so many agency, everybody's structured differently and is successful with the way that they're structured. But I like that. I never thought about it in that kind of blunt statement,
Yeah.
which is a nice way to say it. So,
and we have amazing clients. Like our clients are ridiculous. Like I don't know if I can mention clients, if that's like taboo or not, but like one of our favorite clients, like I wish I worked for them. Like it's amazing. Like I want to like love what they
that's
do.
Good.
Yeah, they're a very large sports association related to a round ball. And
narrows it down a little bit.
Narrows it down. It's bigger than a baseball, smaller than no, I can say who they are. It's the NBA. Like that's one of like my favorite clients in the entire world. And when it comes to like sports, I'm a huge basketball fan. Like I have season tickets for the Wizards, unfortunately. But it's like that type of thing. Like even though they're like a marquee client and like they're an amazing shop, like they have a huge program and they do things the right way. Our team loves working there, but every person who's worked on that project is like, yeah, but like I like working for InfernoRed and I wouldn't change for the world. And so like that's a testament that we kind of feel pretty proud about. So
certainly,
that's awesome. Let me switch gears a little bit and ask you about your as a business leader. What do you do to stay inspired, keep learning? You talk about continuous learning or engagement with the client, with your team, but what about yourself? How do you keep yourself up to date? Where do you hang out? Where do you get your learnings these days?
I mean,
or in the past,
Yeah, that's a great question because I mean, I'm like paranoid of falling behind. It used to be tech in general. Like as a programmer, I was like, I started a user group 20, well, I wasn't the co-founder. I took over a user group. Pal Hayes, he was the founder 20 some years ago for a user group called VB.net. Actually, it was called CavBug, which was the Capital Area Visual Basic Users Group. Back when user groups were not called meetups, for all the young programmers out there. And I was just obsessed with it. And I felt like I just needed, if I didn't keep learning, tech changes so fast, like how could I possibly like succeed? And then I carried that kind of into the entrepreneurial world, which is, I knew at some point, like my two business partners and I, like we kind of fell into this opportunity together. And I decided like, I'm going to quit my pretty decent consulting job at my other company, and with two baby boys in a house in Virginia. And my wife was like, is that a good idea? I'm like, I don't know. We'll see. No, worst case scenario, I'll just get another job. Best case scenario, that this is my last job. And so that kind of fuels my, like, I feel like InfernoRed isn't even close to like what we're capable of, because I think that tech changes so fast, going back to those early days of that feeling of like, it obviously, like you see it flying by. Like we lived through the mobile revolution, we lived through like the iPhone, we lived through, all these opportunities technically. And as we keep growing this incredible team, and every agency has this opportunity, you keep growing this incredible technical team, something's going to come past you and you're just going to be able to hook into it. And then that's going to be the opportunity for you to grow and learn. And you just got to hold on to those opportunities. So for us in the early days, it was mobile. Like we were heavy into mobile. You're going to laugh. Please don't laugh. But we started, our mobile chops were on Windows Phone. See, Jesse's laughing. I can see it. She's laughing.
It's all good. As long as you didn't say that gateway machine with the clouds and the cows on it, you're good. You're good.
Yeah, we hooked into that. And then once we started building for that, they said, hey, can you do that for iOS and Android? And that, so we rode that wave. And then the next thing we're doing more web, and then we're doing cloud. And we talked about this in the pre-show, it's this concept of like, transient advantage, right? So, and I think that Rita Gunther McGrath, she has a book called The End of Competitive Advantage, which, to be honest, I've read most of, but not all of. I got to finish it. She has this concept, and I felt like I was reading an autobiography of like the company, because it's this concept of like you ramp up, exploit, and ramp down. And if you do that with a good team and really smart people, I mean, you just keep going, and that's where that creates that feeling of like, you're not done. Like this company can be so amazing. And then I think for like the leadership side, I don't know, like I feel that's always a work in progress. Like I want to be a better CEO. I'm still learning, like even after all these years. Like I was a developer, like I didn't study, I don't have an MBA in business, I'm just still learning on how to do that well. But I have good partners. And
aren't we all? That's the whole purpose of this conversations. Aren't we all?
Yeah. I mean, and I think that's, surrounding yourself with like strong partners. I mean, my business partners are my best friends, and we've been friends the whole time. And, we have moments where we're like, what are you talking about? You're crazy. Like, my one partner, Art, he calls me, we can have like, disagreement on approach for something, or we have a, spirited discussion. And then he'll call me 10 minutes later and like, hey man, did you book that cruise yet? Like we gotta, we're gonna be leaving in October. Like what's going on? So, I think if you surround yourself, and I think on your last podcast, that was a point that she made as well, starting off with a strong partnership and growing and, treating each other as people as well as just, business owners, then, you can be successful. And I think that bleeds into how we treat our team.
It's been a wonderful theme this season in particular, coming out of COVID and the conversations that we're having and shifted with agency owners and is building stuff that people actually want to use. I know there was an episode we did earlier that was like helping, they were specific about the audience they were building for. It's government and helping our government employees. Literally their mission statement was to have better software to do their jobs. So it's definitely an interest. It's definitely a shift in how people are approaching business, or agencies are approaching how they market business.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I
this
think
is,
you can I add something to that?
yeah, go ahead.
So that concept of interesting and meaningful, like it's kind of what you just described, like for them, like that federal work is interesting and meaningful. For us, like we do have, it's not every single time, I can't make it happen every single time, but we have projects like that where we're working right now. We've been working for 4 years with Microsoft on helping improve election platform technology with the concept of verifiable results in an election with a product called Election Guard, which is open source. So it's their initiative, but working on something like that like inspires the team. They feel like they're doing things that are going to potentially have an impact on the world that they live in. It's not every single project, obviously, like that's hard to do, but we try to make sure that we add those and we have those, and those inspirational type of opportunities definitely help fuel the fire of just work-life happiness, right? So
I feel like it's a wonderful way to end our chat, to be honest with you. Like,
sorry.
there's
I ramble so much. I'm so sorry. Like,
no, don't apologize. It was you never know when these conversations happen where they're going to go. And so, we're pretty open about it. We always do prep conversations, and this is why it's fun, because we end up in, left or right or, center field, if you want to make
Sure.
a baseball reference.
Yeah.
Center court, how's that better for you?
Yeah.
You never know where the chat's going to go, but I think that's a wonderful point to end on, is how we're doing this for people. So Scott, I think both Varun and I we've done this enough. I think we both really enjoyed the conversation. You have some good insights here and how you guys do business, and appreciate your transparency. So for folks listening, where you can find Scott is InfernoRed.com is the website, and I know he's on the LinkedIn as well, so feel free to look him up there. And thank you. That's it, everyone. If you learned something today or laughed, please tell somebody about the podcast. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening. Find our other episodes on agenciesthatbuild.com. Plus, we're listed anywhere you find your favorite podcast.